Okay, so the reason for that whole discussion of the Zuni encounter with Esteban uh, is important because it represents what was a new world for natives as well as Europeans, and it was dangerous for both. Both natives and Europeans had underlying assumptions going in. The natives had the assumptions that all the world's people shared at least a couple of their values, particularly reciprocity and respect. Everything they knew about the world up to that point indicated to them that people in the world respected those concepts. Even the most aggressive natives that any of them would have encountered before European contact would have proven that true. Europeans, though, they engaged these encounters with an obsession for making money, and also the assumption that they were a superior people and they had their God on their side. So to illustrate, this is an image and a caption from 1505, and it tells us a little bit about how Europeans looked at the world they were encountering. And I may have you look at this for one of your discussion boards, but you can see here how the natives are depicted, how the ships are depicted. I mean, they're depicted in a very disturbing way. If you were this is the only one of the few images you would get back in Spain of what natives were like. And here's the caption here: cannibals from The New World by Amerigo Vespucci, who's the geographer that the American continents were named after. The caption said, so if you bought this book, Vespucci's book, which sold very well, this would be one of the images in it. And the caption of this one went, "The people are naked, handsome, brown, well-shaped in body. No one has anything, but all things are common. And the men have as wives those who please them, be they mothers, sisters, or friends. Therein they make no distinction. They also fight with each other, and they eat each other, even those who are slain, and hang the flesh of them in the smoke." So this would have been highly disturbing for a lot of Europeans to see and read. And it's probably not an accurate description of the Taínos here, which is what Amerigo Vespucci, the people he was picturing. But this is what Europeans saw, unfortunately. So the general themes of the encounters we're going to be dealing with, generally speaking, most of the encounters for the first century and a half, so starting in 1492 and then continuing until the mid-late 1500s, almost to 1600, followed this particular pattern. And really, this pattern followed well into the 17th century as well, as we'll see. Cultural intermixing. So the first thing would happen is they would meet, and then there'd be quite a lot of exchange of various cultural artifacts, discussions, all kinds of things. And so there were a lot of mutual benefits from this. There were people who very much wanted there to be this cultural exchange between the natives and Europeans on both sides. You can see here the image of a European man and a native woman and the children that they've had. So there was a reason for optimism in the very beginning. Most of the time when the Europeans showed up, what their goal was to somehow profit off of this relationship. And they wanted the relationship to be as positive as possible, but they were also, like we saw before, they were also arrogant and sure that God was on their side, and so they wanted to be the superior partners in those relationships as well. Then the encounters would start to take on more of a focus on profit, and the Europeans tended to after the initial encounter, want to make money very quickly, and they would start pressuring the natives in one way or another to help them do that, whether it was giving stuff up, trading with them, or taking from them. And so profits very quickly became a main motivation for everything the Europeans did. Following that, usually within a few years, disease would hit. I think now we can kind of understand, given that we're dealing with COVID-19, what it means for disease to disrupt your society. So the epidemics that the natives were hit with, we take for granted how these went, and now we can understand much more how they went. So the epidemics wouldn't kill everybody. You'd have a community, and they'd be fine for a while, and then somebody gets sick from one of the Europeans, and then a few more people get sick, and then a few more and a few more. So there'd be these rolling epidemics. They didn't know exactly what was happening, and it would throw the native societies into turmoil. Think about how much our lives have been disrupted due to COVID-19. Imagine if we were facing COVID-19 and we're also facing a world war and a depression at the same time. And something, let's just say something else. Let's say we're not only fighting a world war overseas, we're also fighting a civil war. And then you have the pandemic, and then you have a leadership crisis. And what do you know? We actually have those kind of things going on. But imagine how disruptive that is to your society, how anxiety-inducing it is, how difficult it is to just do the normal things you used to do with your life. And that's what natives were going through. They wouldn't lose everybody in every epidemic wave. They'd lose 3% in one epidemic, 10% in another, 6% in another. Over time, that added up. But at first, it wouldn't take everyone. And so your textbook author talks about this. It's a misnomer to say, disease killed all the natives. Disease killed a lot of people, but not everybody. Like any disease, just like how the coronavirus works now, not everybody who gets it dies. The majority of people who get it don't die. The majority of people who get it live. But some people die. But imagine you had a COVID-19 1 year, then you had it 3 years later, then you had it 7 years later, then you had it 4 years after that. And it's a different one each time. It's something you can't stop. That's essentially what they were dealing with disease. So it was very disruptive to their societies. It was hard to manage their societies the way they had. And it caused a lot of vulnerability among them. Violence. Usually the encounters would devolve into violence. And this is where the death came in. Imagine you have to fight a war at the same time you're fighting a disease. It's going to be rough. It's not going to be fun. And it's going to take a pretty serious toll, because you've got to choose people who are going to fight among the healthy population. You're going to have to leave behind people who may be suffering from whatever epidemic's going on, and they can't help them. So the violence that Europeans would then inflict upon natives after they went through this kind of initial positive interaction, then desire for profits, then the transmission of disease, then there would be a violent episode. Sometimes this process would go quickly, sometimes it would take years. Other times it would take weeks or months. And so, but each encounter tended to follow this pattern. Cultural intermixing with some benefit, profit, desire for profit, especially among the Europeans, but also among the natives who wanted to benefit from these relationships as well. And then disease, and then violence.